While interest rates at the federal level and the real estate level are typically different, they can have an effect on your buying power.
The rates were at 3% a year ago, and you qualify for a $600,000 loan, and now the rates are at 6%. You just lost $300,000 in buying power.
Right.
So that's a huge hindrance for somebody who got pre-qualified to purchase a house in January, and now they find the house in June. They actually need to go back to their lender and get pre-qualified.
It's not all doom and gloom if you're smart about the big picture.
Housing prices are going up and to the right throughout history. The only way you get a lower housing price is to buy a DeLorean, find Michael J. Fox, and go back to the future. But on interest rates, now that's different. So if my son gets into a house this month on a little bit higher rate than he would have liked, what could happen a year, 2, 3, 4 down the road?
Interest rates might come down. He got the house. And now that he owns the house, the Fed lowers the rate because they need to stimulate the economy again. He can refinance at 5%.
And if the rate goes up?
He's stoked because he got in at 6.
While most of the discussion you hear tends to focus on the market as a whole, on a national level, the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey focuses on how it affects us locally.
Am I buying at the top of the market? Well, that's like, am I buying at the top of the stock market? Well, that's a as Jay used that word, amalgamation. That's a bunch of companies. Are you buying a bad company at the top of the bottom of the market? Doesn't matter where it is, it's bad. But if you buy real estate in San Luis Obispo, you're probably going to be okay.
Somebody told me once, another real estate agent up in Cayucas, his mom told him, beach towns and college towns, that's where you invest in real estate.
Now, a candid look at where the market is currently at locally, driven by your host, Team Sweasey member, James Bueno.
Welcome to the SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey Podcast. The band is back together. We're all back. Hello, Hal.
Hello, James.
JT is here.
James.
And Mr. J. Pete of Keller Williams is here.
Good to see you, James.
Super excited. Federal interest rates, Mr. Sweasey. What does that mean for real estate? You see federal interest rates rising. People are saying that, man, my rate's going to go up. What's happening? What's the difference?
The rates have been so low for so long to try to stimulate the economy, and now the economy sounds like it's stimulated. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does it seem stimulated?
It's been moving for a while.
Plenty of stimulation. We got overstimulated maybe. Prices of almost everything are going up these days. And the way the Federal Reserve can kind of slow things down and mellow them out is to certainly raise those rates. So what happens is, if I'm sitting down with a homeowner and they're getting ready to sell their house, and we look at a home that sold in March and that buyer bought at a 3% rate, and today we're closer to 6%. One, that was probably the fastest doubling of interest rates in history, probably.
In over 40 years.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So that was a big jump. So what it did is took a lot of buyers that maybe could afford a certain price and dropped down their price. And that's a significant difference, 20 to 25% or more, I think, in mortgage costs and interest rates. So it's slowed it down. It's moved some buyers from one price to another. It's moved some buyers out of the market. So in general, we are seeing a reduction in the buyer demand. So instead of 20 buyers for every house, we might have 3 or 4 in the first week or two. Jay, you probably are more knowledgeable about the back workings of mortgage rates, because a lot of people think the federal funds rate is what determines mortgage rates, but it's something else.
Yeah, there's a correlation between the two, but usually when we're talking about mortgage rates, they've already padded in what the Fed's going to do. So when the Fed raises the rate 3/4 of a point, which is literally the biggest jump they've made in over close to 30 years plus, it's already been padded in, because the auction, the mortgage rate securities and the industry has kind of already padded the rate. So we know that going in. You know, you had made a comment, Hal, that as the rates go up, the buying power goes down, and we can equate $100,000 in buying power for every percent the interest rate goes up. So if the rates were at 3% a year ago, and you qualify for a $600,000 loan, and now the rates are at 6%, you just lost $300,000 in buying power.
Right.
So that's a huge hindrance for somebody who got pre-qualified to purchase a house in January, and now they find the house in June. They actually need to go back to their lender and get pre-qualified to make sure that they can afford the new home. And as new loan programs become available, they need to keep their eyes wide open so they don't get themselves caught in a graduated interest rate that makes their life more costly if they can't afford it. It's super important.
Yeah.
There's some great programs, and there are great lenders out there. I'll defer to the lender world for that because they're the ones with the programs, but it's super important to understand who your mortgage company is, who your lender is, and that they're taking great care of you. But there are programs out there to help.
John, you had a family member in the moment of purchasing and the rate adjustments, because what I think you said is it is kind of priced in. Like, things are usually priced based on expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So we'll have to see what those mortgage rates look like after this jump in the next, I don't know, John, you're in the middle of it. What do you
Yeah, we're family members opened escrow yesterday up in Seattle and buying a property up there, and we're working with a local lender here who also does business in Seattle, and we're kind of waiting to hear from him tomorrow what his outlook is on rates and maybe where we ought to go in terms of the type of loan that we secure on the property there. I say we, it's my family member, but I'm advising.
Yeah. We know what kind of family member that is, right?
Right.
So do you have a sense, because the rates are so dynamic, and I haven't actually looked today, but like for mortgage rates today, if they decide to lock about, and again, this is a very general term.
I'd hate to give a specific number, but I doubt that we will lock a 30-year fixed mortgage. We'll probably be looking at an adjustable rate, maybe a 5.1 or a 7.1, which is a loan that basically locks the rate for the first 5 or 7 years of the loan, and then it adjusts to what's going on in the market. The likelihood that this buyer, who happens to be my son,
there we go,
is going to be in their first house 5 to 7 years from now is probably pretty low. This is their first house, not their next house.
That absolutely makes sense.
Yep.
If someone would have said to me back in January, what were the rates in January? Like, still hovering around 3?
Yeah, 3 7/8, 4.
Yeah. So if you'd have said to me in January, hey, JT, the rates are going to go up a couple of points between now and June, what do you think is going to happen to the prices of the property? I would have said, prices are going to get a little soft, maybe even go down a little bit. Is that happening?
No, we haven't seen that. We've seen some softening, but not a price adjustment. Just demand is down.
There you go. And I think that's the key word, demand, because pricing hasn't really changed. But a month ago, open house, 25, 30 people walk through, 7, 8 offers. Now we're seeing 3 or 4 people walk through and 1 or 2 offers. The perception of the value of the property might be different from the consumer, from the buyer side, than it was before. So we're seeing that flattening. We've been on an upswing for 12 years,
right?
And so we're seeing the rates decrease the buyer pool because the guy that could qualify now has lost some buying power because the interest rate has gone up. So we see fewer buyers being able to qualify for homes. So we're kind of seeing a flattening at the top, but that's where things you might get a dip down, a price might come down, but then you might get a spike up because someone really wants the house that just went up next door. So you're going to see like a little bobbling, like a bobber on the water. It's going to go up and down, but in very, very small increment. You're not going to see a big drop in prices. Right. Probably not going to see a huge spike in prices while the rates are where they are. So it's going to be a dance of we're dancing at the top.
This is so raw because it happened this week that my son was the only offer on the which is really different than what we've experienced last
in Seattle,
year.
Which was a hot market.
The Seattle market is just as hot as our market here. And what was interesting was in the negotiation, we were able to negotiate a few of the terms, but he still had to pay list price. That's a win, right?
Yeah,
you only pay list price after the last 6 months or a year. You didn't have to get into a bidding war, and you didn't have to pay over list price. So, we're dancing like this was a victory this week.
Yeah,
he's happy.
Yeah,
he is very happy,
and the sellers are probably upset.
Well, I don't know if they're upset.
Full price, right?
But they only got full price.
No. That's
but they held firm.
Makes a difference. Yeah. No, but it's when you're used to getting lots of offers, and then maybe you get one. That's just a different mindset. So depending on how involved a client is in the marketplace as a seller, we used to go, we got an offer. That used to be exciting alone. And if it's full price, it's like, shut the door, we're done, this is great. Now it's like, I don't know. Can I raise it?
Yeah, when were full price offers bad?
Yeah, right.
But what's interesting too is if you look back in history and we talk about inflation, we talk about higher interest rates, and again, I had not looked at history 6 months ago. And if you'd have said interest rates are going up, I'd have said then prices are probably going to go down. When you look back at history, and I know, Jay, you've studied history, have interest rates and inflation ever had a negative correlation to housing prices?
Not enough to even put a blip in the overall line trend from 1930s to 2022. You wouldn't even see it. It's a straight line. Now, if you take a micro look at the decades, certainly there's going to be ups and downs, but interest rates and inflation rarely affect the value of homes. And I want to go back to something I said earlier, which was we're kind of bobbling at the top. We're bobbling at the top of this particular moment. Like prices are going to go back up and continue to rise. So we're always going to see that. That's why I'm bullish on real estate as an ownership from an investment standpoint, because it is a powerful tool to build wealth. I interview 3 or 4 millionaires a year. I try to get one a quarter that I've met, and they always tell me the same thing, and it's always the same, that I made my money doing this. I built my wealth through real estate ownership. And if those are the guys that we're wanting to emulate in life, just do what they do. No need to recreate the wheel. Right? That's from an investor standpoint. But I mean, if I'm owning a home, if I want to buy a house to live in, what is my biggest investment? It's going to be my house.
Sure.
And my grandparents, that was their retirement. They traded up, and then when they sold their house, they actually got a life estate, stayed in it, and they lived on the money until they died. Right. It was their retirement.
Yeah.
Power tool.
It's huge. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have retirement. The level of their retirement depends on the equity in their home.
Wow.
The headlines make people feel nervous. A lot of things are changing in the economy and the world. I mean, it's changing at a rapid pace. I think change is faster than we're used to historically.
One of the conversations we had, before we went live on the podcast was about housing prices and do they very often go down. You just talked about that, Jay. Mm-hmm. So if you look at a graph of housing prices and, the housing prices are going up and to the right throughout history. And as I was teasing on a couple podcasts ago, the only way you get a lower housing price is to buy a DeLorean, find Michael J. Fox, and go back to the future. But on interest rates, now that's different, right? So if my son gets into a house this month on a little bit higher rate than he would have liked, what could happen a year, 2, 3, 4 down the road?
Values are going up. Interest rates might come down. You only get one opportunity to buy. You can refinance for as long as you hold that piece of real estate. So if you don't like today's rates, and here's what we know, right? The Fed was decreasing the rate to do one thing, and that was to stimulate our economy. And they did that. Like we've got our unemployment rate is down. The gross domestic product is up. Everything's looking great. Now we've got to deal with inflation. And how do they hedge inflation? By raising the rate. And one of the major tools that the Fed has to stimulate the economy is to lower the rate. And if we're already at 1 or less than 1, they've got nowhere to go. So the only thing that they can do, there's plenty of things they can do, but one of the biggest tools they can do is to raise the rate, the prime rate, so that if there is a hiccup, if there needs to be an adjustment to stimulate growth in the economy again. We had a yield curve inversion a few weeks ago that might create a little bit of a recession. Historically that has happened in our country. The only tool or the biggest tool that they've got is to lower the rate. And if it's at 1, they can't. So they're raising it incrementally so that they have something to work with. And so, JT, to your point, your son gets the house. That's the deal. He got the house. And now that he owns the house, the Fed lowers the rate because they need to stimulate the economy again. He can refinance at 5%.
And if the rate goes up?
He's stoked because he got in at 6.
Right.
And the rates are going up because they're trying to control the increase in pricing of things.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So you're glad you have something like that. I don't know who I heard talk about this, but he goes, there's a reason banks won't lend you money to go buy stocks. Right? But what will they lend you money for?
Yeah, real estate.
To go buy a house.
You bet.
To go buy a piece of real estate. In terms of, besides being a place to live and all the benefits of having a home or an investment property, it is a very solid place to be, set aside your money like those millionaires you talked about.
We have the great fortune of coming to work every day in the real estate industry. And what we hear out in the public is there's some fear amongst our family and friends right now. Should I buy a house even in this market? And like I told my son, as you were saying, Jay, get the price today.
Yep.
We'll make it work.
Absolutely. The deal is getting the house.
Yep.
Question for Jay on this. You're talking to millionaires and how they built their worth through real estate. You look at what some of the investment firms are doing now, and they're going out and they're not investing in companies. They're going out and investing in real estates. In some instances, other parts of the country, buying up entire neighborhoods so they have them as rentals for this. Is that kind of, maybe Hal, you can help out on that too. Is that kind of thing, do we see that penetrating into our area where people with capital are coming in and buying up some of the inventory that's already limited in order to have an investment to sit on?
Well, I can speak to locally, and we haven't seen that, but these are big investment firms with smart people running them. And so it's like, oh, I want to go buy a farm because I think owning a farm, a crop producing farm would be a good thing. Well, they're not going to buy a 2-acre farm. So San Luis Obispo is just too small for these guys. So they can go to a Phoenix or a Dallas or whatever. And I don't know if they're buying tracts of homes, but there are more investors. I get this all the time, like, oh, are they coming in and swooping up properties? No, but they are elsewhere. So what it tells me is they see the value in owning real estate, okay, as an investment. And it's a solid place to be, and they haven't done that in the past. So I think it was 2010 or 11. I remember when the market was really bad. We could kind of see maybe what they call some green shoots, like things were getting better. And I think about that time, Warren Buffett goes, "I'd go out and buy as many single-family homes as I could right now." Right? So here we are at this stage, and real estate is a great hedge against inflation. There's tax benefits. There's ownership benefits. So it hasn't affected us locally, but that move is happening, and they also are doing it because, boy, if housing gets more expensive to buy, what's going to happen? More people will probably rent, and there's just not enough places to live. So they're like going, boy, you know how much it would cost me to build that house that I'm going to buy for 80% of what it would cost to build and the time and all that takes? That's a great value. So that's what I perceive, and what I've read about is their perception about real estate versus stocks, which they still do, but just real estate. But it doesn't affect us locally directly, but indirectly it certainly does.
Jay, you were talking about interviewing millionaires, and it reminds me of I put together a college curriculum for a class, and the required reading was The Millionaire Next Door, which some of us in the room have read that's 30, 40 years old. And being the only retired or semi-retired guy in the room, the reason I was able to retire is because I subscribed to the notion in that book that you live on 80, 85% of your income. You invest the rest in 2 places for me: real estate and the best companies in America. And when you do that for 40 years, you look around and you go, well, I've built something here.
Yeah, that worked out pretty good.
Worked out pretty good. I can get to sit here in the room with you guys. How great is that?
Watch what you say. You might get re-retired really quick.
Don't threaten me like that.
Where are we going to end up? When's it going to change?
Right? Yeah, he didn't say it loud enough. John said every day. Yeah, it changes every day. That's why it's fun. You just don't know. You got to look at things long term. How long does it take to get a high school degree? How long does it take to build a relationship? How long does it take to get yourself healthy? All those things take time, and they don't end. It's constant. So the market's always fluctuating. And you can't look at one day or 1 week. And when people say, am I buying at the top of the market? Well, that's like, am I buying at the top of the stock market? Well, that's a as Jay used that word, amalgamation. That's a bunch of companies. Like, are you buying, a bad company at the top of the bottom of the market? Doesn't matter where it is, it's bad. But if you buy real estate in San Luis Obispo, you're probably going to be okay. If you're buying it in Louisiana, it could be okay. I don't know. But I'm just saying, you can't just look at the market because there's so many parts of it. There's price, there's number of houses sold when people ask about the market. But is it a great house in a great location? And I just met with some folks today, because we talk about inventory all the time, just today. And their family bought the house in 1967, built by a longtime local builder. And they said, the reason we bought it is one of 2 homes for sale in San Luis Obispo. Okay, so do things change? All the time. And then we were going back to our market statistics. Right now we got about 280 homes, let's say, in the county for sale. And 10 years ago we had 1,140 or something like that. So all I'm saying is things are always changing. I wish there was an easy answer to that one, but it's always changing.
Somebody told me once, another real estate agent up in Cayucas, his mom told him, beach towns and college towns, that's where you invest in real estate. But the key on that word, invest, when you look at the definition of an investor versus a speculator, what does an investor do?
Buys and holds, yeah.
Buys and holds.
Yeah.
Long-term, goal-oriented. That's kind of in the definition. I don't have it right in front of me. But a speculator's taken a lot more risk. So every time I've speculated on something, I've lost my shirt. And every time I've been an investor, I've done very, very well.
In the real estate game, a speculator would be somebody who flips. I'm going to buy a house and flip it and rehab it and flip it. That would be a speculator in our business. And someone that buys and holds it on for rent. And I'll quote my grandfather to close out my little speech here, and that is that he said, son, buy land. They ain't building any more of it.
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome. That's great, JT.
Isn't there a country western song out right now that says buy dirt?
Yeah. Something like that, yeah. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, James.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Hal Sweasey Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. It comes out every Monday, so check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey Podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on halsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. halsweasey.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the Hal Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
Hal Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 01111-911. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey Podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.